This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my special guest today is Laurie Genevish. Have you ever worked in an organization where some of the people were clearly in the wrong roles? That's where Laurie comes in. Laurie Genevish is a performance improvement consultant and the president of the Performance Difference, a firm that helps companies reduce employee turnover and improve productivity by analyzing hiring and skills gaps, determining performance success factors, and implementing plans for individual, team, and company development. She has a great understanding of performance improvement and an appreciation for what it takes to truly make a productive and sustainable workforce. Laurie helps companies like Marlin Leasing, Freshie, and Heat Tech reduce employee turnover, improve time to productivity, and make sure they put the best people in the key roles. When Laurie is not helping clients succeed with their workforce or being a mom, she can be found working towards her first degree black belt or climbing mountains. Welcome, Laurie, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, as you know, we start by asking a couple of quirky questions of our guests, get to know them a little better as people before we start. So my first quirky question for you is, what actor would you want to play you in a movie?
I think Julia Roberts. And Julia Roberts, because she just looks like the kind of person you could go, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. Or, she's so can just go up to her, very approachable is the word I'm looking for, and easygoing and such. So yeah, so it's someone I feel like I could go up to and have a fun girls' night or something with.
That's a good reason to pick that actress, right?
That's right.
Very cool, very cool. All right, and then the second quirky question is, tell us something surprising about yourself that most people don't know.
Yeah, so it was actually part of my intro, but usually people are very surprised when they hear that I am a black belt in Taekwondo. And honestly, growing up, if you told me I was going to be a black belt in Taekwondo, I would have been like, you're nuts. So it was one of those things my oldest son was doing when he was little, and I wanted to get exercise and thought, well, I'm just sitting here, why don't I just do it? And ended up sticking with it and really enjoying it. So absolutely.
Now, does your child still do it with you too, or?
He does. So actually the whole family does it now.
Oh, wow.
So I have my black belt. My oldest son has his black belt, and my husband just got his black belt this year. I got mine a couple of years ago. And then my youngest, who just turned 10, he'll probably get it in the next couple of years. So yeah, it's a family event in our house.
do not mess the Genevish family.
That's right. It's funny. We get teased when my husband and I, we do sparring and stuff, and we're like, oh, this is just like a regular night at the Genevish house. Pow, pow, pow.
That's awesome. Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now for something a little more serious. What's your story? What happened in your life that got you to a place where you cared about performance improvement?
So yeah, I love my story, and it's because we all have these ambitions, when we're young. Oh, I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. And I actually started my college career thinking I was going to be a marine biologist because I love the water so much. Well, then I got into school and realized, wait, there's a lot of science and math. No, not what I thought it was more like being in the water all day. And this was before the internet, before I could do a whole lot of researching. So, but I did through that, through schooling and stuff, I realized I loved fundraising. So I thought I was born to be a fundraiser and did fundraising for many years, but ended up just hating it, because it just dragged me down, the sales aspect of it. I'm a very cause motivated person. So for those reasons, that's why I love fundraising. But I'm helping people. It's worth it. But then it got to the point where helping people was, the burden on me did not match my helping of the people. So then I found a career coach and decided I needed to start a career in training and development. And through that, it literally I happened to be on an elevator one night and met a woman who was a training manager of Kinko's. And I had just like a few weeks before said, I think I'm going to go into training. And long story short, a month later, I was working for this woman. And her name was Darlene, and she just played a big impact on me and my success. And she did so much for me. And so I saw the power and how you can truly make a difference in people's lives through helping them see what they want to do, helping them improve their performance in those things. So that's where my love of training has started, and developing people and helping people just in companies, build their workforce.
Okay, you're the only person I know that's actually had to do an elevator pitch and it worked. Maybe even the only person I know that did an elevator pitch, period. So, in a real elevator.
That's right. It was a late Friday night. It was one of those, serendipitous things that it was like, it was a sign. It really was a sign. So, absolutely.
Very, very cool. Okay. Well, I guess one question that some people might have on their mind as they hear, as they were listening to your intro, is they're probably not sure what a performance improvement consultant is. So, so what is can you explain that role, and can you tell us how it is that organizations come to work with you?
Right. So, organizations who might be having challenges in turnover. Like, God, we cannot keep X people in this role, and we just can't figure out why. Or we don't know who our next leaders are. We really want to figure out who our future leaders are. Or I have a team that just can't work together, or I have a new team coming together, and this project is so critical that I want to make sure they work together well. People come to me with those kinds of issues, and I help them figure out what either the causes are or how these people act, depending on the situation, and basically come up with solutions. So see where the challenges might lie and the issues, and define solutions.
Okay, so can you give us a little more detail? So
Sure.
so they are having problems. You mentioned keeping employees. So
Yes.
I don't want you to give away proprietary information or anything like that, but can you give some tangible examples maybe about how that looks going in, and then what kind of things make a difference? What are some of the kinds of things that you examine, for instance, maybe when you're working with clients?
Right. So if they're having high turnover in a role, so I would then, talk to people who are in the role currently, and maybe talk about leadership to see, are there disconnects there? Like, are there, is it a leadership issue, or is it something else? I've had clients where the expectations weren't set right. I was told one thing, and it's really another. And so working with them to, either change those expectations or find people who are willing to meet those expectations. Also, too, one of the things I do with clients is benchmarking employees. So if you have a role where you fill a lot of people, such as maybe a customer service rep or a sales rep, and what I can go do is do some research and data looking at your high, mid, and low performers and come up with a raw data of what are the true traits needed for this role and what traits do you not need in a role, and then help them create the job description and also help them assess and analyze future candidates to make sure they're getting the right people in that role. And that would also apply for succession planning, help them determine, okay, so what would the future role look like, and let's look at who you think you might have. And we'll talk about this more, but I'm a big fan of assessments. I've used lots of them throughout my career, and it's because I love data. I love taking something that's very nebulous and have it make sense. And that's what I think, this whole performance improvement thing doesn't have to be subjective. You can make objective decisions, and that's what I like helping clients do. And that's the results I see from them.
Good. Excellent. Okay. Well, in this work that you've been doing, is there anything that you've learned that might surprise a lot of leaders, that maybe they have some impression about improving performance, but there's a lot of folks that are getting it wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know if I asked that very well, but
Sure. Absolutely. That it's hard. It's this thing up here, that, here are the business needs, and we drive to those. But really, you want to create a mutually beneficial workplace, one that works for the business and then works for the employee as well, because that's where you're going to have real success. We all know this, but we don't always practice it. But, without your people, you're not going to, without the people you have, you're not going to be as successful. Your success really does a big part rely on the people you have in there doing things. And so if you can, use data from assessments to help you understand what drives and motivates that person, and then match them to the right roles, your growth, your success of your business can be exponential, versus shooting in the dark and making people attend things and trainings that they really don't want to because they're not in the right job, or, and so on.
Gotcha. Well, so let's talk about assessments since it's already come up a couple of times.
Right.
You mentioned that you use the Harrison assessment. I know we've talked about this offline at a different time, but so why should leaders consider taking assessments themselves? Aren't most leaders pretty self-aware, or what kind of a role can an assessment play?
Yeah. So we all have things we know about ourselves, and such. But what we aren't as aware of is the unintended consequences of our behavior. So, for example, I have a client right now that I'm working with, and I've used the Harris assessment on, and one of the areas we look at is communication. And he is very frank in his communication. And to him, it's being passionate because he loves the business. And so he doesn't understand why people just don't listen to him, because he's direct and to the point and passionate. And when you talk to his employees, and as this assessment shows, is they're afraid of him. He's too controlling. What he defines as passion, others having to be around him think of him as controlling and won't listen. So they think, what's the point of me even giving my idea, because he's not going to listen anyway.
So did the assessment help him understand how that reaction was coming out of his employees, or how did
It
the assessment play in?
it did. One of the things that the assessment looks at is, like I said, communication. And when it measures communication, it measures how frank and how diplomatic someone should be. Because if you think about it, in this, we have both traits in us. And to be a truly effective communicator, you need to know when to be frank, and you also need to know be diplomatic. You need to get the point across, but also make people feel good about themselves within it. So to be a truly effective communicator, you're going to have that balance. And if you're strong in one or the other, they both have their strengths. You know, it's sort of, the saying goes, you know, sometimes a strength is a weakness. Mm-hmm. You know, if you are frank, it's a strength because you are direct and to the point. But it's also a weakness because you're perceived as controlling and you won't listen. If you're diplomatic, that is a strength. You know, you're very caring, warm, empathetic. But if you are too diplomatic, you can come across as evasive, you know, and can't make a decision, too wishy-washy. It's like, would they just tell us what they think? So it's looking at that balance, and that he was able to see that he was very high on frank and low on diplomatic. And so in working with him, we're trying to build up that diplomatic side of him, so people feel more comfortable in talking with him.
And is that been a hard pill to swallow? I can imagine if you feel good about yourself, you know, that you like the fact that you're frank or whatnot. What's in it for him to adjust?
For this particular person, you know, they're trying to grow. He's an executive in a company. He's trying to build the business, and he can't because he can't get his people to do what he wants. And so for him, it's critical that he builds his communication skills if he wants his business to grow.
Okay, so there's that underlying motivator that he's willing to listen and to right. Try things a little differently so that he can get the results he wants.
Right. The Harrison assessment in particular, it measures 175 different traits, and another trait that it measures is self-improvement. So I usually look at that score before I talk to someone, because that will tell me, are they going to be open to the feedback, or might I have some challenges, and what are ways I can better coach them to maybe get them there.
Do you have a good healthy self-improvement score? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Always good to hear. Always good to hear.
Yes.
All right. Well, along those same kind of lines, the name of this podcast is Permission to Speak, and I like to talk about employees having a voice and being able to speak. Mm-hmm. Are there other ways that an assessment can help leaders understand what they benefit from when their employees speak up, or what they miss out on when their employees are not comfortable speaking up?
Right. Yeah, because, you know, like, again, for the particular assessment I utilize a lot is the Harrison assessment, because another thing it looks at is opinions. And so it looks at, the two traits that make up opinions is how certain you are of your own opinions and how collaborative you are. So are you certain of how you feel versus are you okay to be wrong? If you're able to have an idea but being open to other people's ideas, that's also going to affect your communication and your relationship with the employees, which it can be important for a leader as well.
So maybe if you're not as open to being wrong, you may be putting off this vibe that, hey, I know I'm right, so don't even bother sharing with me.
Exactly. Or on the flip side, if you're too collaborative and not certain of your own opinions, I had another client Actually did some team development with his group and realized, and he sort of knew it, but he didn't understand the unintended consequences before the assessment, is someone would come to him with an idea. He's like, oh, that's great, let's do that. And then, maybe an hour later, someone would come with, well, let's do this idea. Oh, yeah, that's great, let's do that. So someone would be like, but wait, I thought we were going in this direction. Well, they came to me. It's like, well, so, that can play an impact in the how your employees see you as a leader, and it can affect your relationships.
Gotcha. So in that particular situation, was he able to adjust his style? Is that what the answer ended up being, or?
Yeah, he did. He realized it, and so together they would. And this was a team that wasn't having regular team meetings. And so instead of people coming by the office telling him things, they would talk about the things in the office, in these weekly team meetings, so that everyone heard. And, a decision was made, it was documented. Now, but if circumstances happened that something came up, they would then decide. But absolutely.
Okay, very cool. So when we were preparing for this interview, I know the idea of paradoxes came up, and the Harrison assessment, I believe, is the one that uses paradoxes quite a bit. So can you explain what those are and how they impact a leader as they're working with folks?
Sure. So, and I've actually teased it a little bit in what I've talked about already. So a paradox is a statement that seems like it can't be true when actually it is. So, for example, one day I was Googling paradox, and a paradox is jumbo shrimp. How could you think, it is, because you think shrimp, they're small. How could there possibly be jumbo shrimp? Well, there are bigger shrimp than other shrimp that are considered jumbo. So the same thing happens with the paradoxes in Harrison technology. It's taking two traits that are polar opposite and seeing where your dynamics are in each. So like I said, in communication, we either think of ourselves as being frank or diplomatic. You're one or the other. But as I said before, they each have their own strengths, but they also have their consequences. If you score high on frank, you need to have the balance of being diplomatic to help balance out your high frankness. And the reality is that you don't have one or the other in you. You have all these traits in you. It's just how much of each you have them. And so we look at where your natural tendencies are and see, where you are in your, so for example, in communications with this guy, he's very frank and he realizes he needs to move the needle a little bit more diplomatic, and we're able to do that. The other thing that can also do is look at flips, because under stress, sometimes we flip, so for example, I know normally I'm pretty easygoing, communicative person, but if I'm under stress, I will become very blunt. What I think. And it's that self-aware piece. As leaders, we may not be aware of how we are under stress. And sometimes we may flip and sometimes we may not. It just sort of depends on the paradox and such.
Okay. And I think we're very lucky when we have people in our work teams that are willing to shine a light,
Yes.
reflect back to us how we're coming across. I remember at one place I was stationed when I was in the military, I had a guy come in and say, you say you're open to having an interruption, but your face is saying something else. So
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
it's good to get, whether it's feedback from somebody else or an assessment, something like that, to help us understand we don't always come across how we think we're coming across.
I leave my door open, so therefore I have an open door policy. Come to me.
Yeah, there's a little more to it than that, right? All right, excellent. Well, Can you give us another example maybe of how assessment and coaching have helped maybe one or two of your clients as they're trying to grow as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my actually, if I had my druthers, I would do team stuff all day. I love doing the teamwork because I get a joy of the ahas from people and them going. I had a client, they took on a department in this a 1,500 organization, and the client was taking on a very tough team. In fact, the HR person told them, "Are you sure you want to take on this team? They are the roughest group in the whole team, in the whole company." And they were like, they like challenge. They're like, "Yeah, I'll change them up." And so they brought me in, and we utilized the whole paradoxes and looking, because we're able to look at how we make decisions, how we delegate, how innovative we are, what we're motivated by, not only how we communicate, but how we like to be communicated to as well. And so one of my greatest moments of it was that this their one most challenging employee said, "Oh, when I come to them this way, I get this answer. If I just came to them this way, I would get a completely different answer, or, or it wouldn't be as harsh, or I wouldn't get an automatic no." And so the employees got this understanding of who their manager is, so they're able to better manage up as well. So it's not only the manager knowing their employees, but also the employees understanding the manager, to create, again, that synchronicity, and really help them work with each other.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. All right. Well, are there one or two tips that you would have for leaders that could help them change the way they lead to gain better results?
I would say, be aware. Be aware of your leadership style. If you are someone who's like, "Well, that's just how I am," that they have to accept it. I would say that's okay, but think about, how might they be perceiving you? How might you be coming across that you don't realize are unintended consequences? Or better yet, if you have the relationship, ask them. Ask for that feedback. Say, I realize I'm not getting the results I want. Can you tell me why? Can you give me some insights? I really want to grow. I care about my leadership. I care about this team. Tell me, how, what you think are some of my challenges. So I would ask other people, or, you might want to ask people that you trust, maybe not your employees, maybe ask, your spouse, or maybe someone else who works with you in a department. Just ask is the biggest thing.
Good.
And start gaining those insights.
Yeah. It's good to have a conversation sometimes, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. My only hesitation is you got, though, if you're not someone who typically asks for feedback, and you are, they may not be as, "Well, I asked, they wouldn't tell me." So that might also be a telling sign for you that maybe something needs to change. If they're not willing to give you the feedback, that says something about your leadership style as well.
Right. Maybe they're expecting something harsh to come back, or some unintended consequences on their part.
Exactly. So that's why, 180s or no, 360s are great. But I think there's a downside to 360s, because people aren't going to be as honest, because they are afraid. Is it really anonymous? Is it really, So that's why I think using other types of assessments, are, along with that as well, are really beneficial.
Great. Okay. Well, Laurie, I've got just a couple more questions before we wrap up. But the next to the last one is, are there any questions that I didn't ask that you wish I would have asked around this area of performance improvement?
Yeah. I really think leaders need to pay more and more attention to who their successors are going to be. Our research shows a lot of our employees and potential future leadership are going to be retiring soon, or our leaders. And so if you are not ahead of that game in identifying your leadership, you may be stuck. So I think it's really important companies right now really we all say we're going to do succession planning, but now more than ever, it's really, really, really important because we are going to hit a time when a large group of our workforce are going to be retiring. I think I heard I think the SHRM statistic, maybe I heard a statistic recently that in the next 5 years, 30% of our workforce is going to be retiring and leaving, and 70% of it is going to be leadership.
Wow, that's startling.
Yeah. So how are you, and get them prepared now so you have that easier transition and not in this lull in your business because you didn't do the planning now.
So it's not just a matter of identifying the people, it's helping them get up to speed on the things that the skills gap that they might have to be able to fill those roles, right?
Exactly. Because it's going to happen. And, a lot of times people are like, well, I'll just hire someone, but there's a lot of cost and time to that. And another thing why assessments help is there might be a star in your group that you don't realize. You may have someone that interviews really well, but then was wrong for the position because they interviewed really bad, where maybe someone is maybe more quiet, more reserved. They were actually the better candidate, but because they didn't come across in certain ways. So again, using assessments tells you things about the candidate and your people that you just don't get by just talking to them.
Good. All right.
Also, I think it's also a competitive advantage for companies as well. I do see with companies when they use assessments, employees feel like, oh, they really do care about me, and about my development. I was actually a client of Harrison for many years, and I used it in learning and development. And I had a basic management class that I did, and I would use the Harrison assessment for it to help them realize, okay, what are your strengths in management? What are some things maybe you're going to need to gap? And I even had someone realize they were in the wrong role. A lot of times we promote people to management because they're technically very good.
Right.
And technical skills and management skills are two totally different things. And while everyone loved this person, they were great, they just weren't fitting it. And they actually in class were like, that's why I hate my job. Because they were somewhat self-aware, but not fully, and so we were able to move them more into a position where they were happier, their employees were happier because they got a better person, who was more suited for management in that role. So, think about the angst and the time and the productivity of the team that was saved by addressing that sooner than later.
Very good. All right. So in this journey that you've been on from that elevator till now, what have been one or two pleasant surprises along the way that you've come across?
It's just that more and more companies are starting to care more about HR things, and performance improvement and the improvement of the employees. So while it's not all the way there yet, as much as I would like to, it does seem that the role of training and HR and such is seen as a real value add, and companies realizing they need to pay attention to it. And of course, I get my, again, this is why I love what I do. It's when someone goes, aha, or, like I said, oh, that's why when I come to them this way, I get this answer. So I told you in the beginning, I'm a very cause motivated person. Well, my cause now is really helping companies have truly happy, productive workforces.
Very cool. And that ends up with better business results. Who knew, right?
we
do.
I mean, it's about the numbers, but again, you can't get those numbers without the people. So absolutely, yeah.
Very good. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing some of your journey and some of the things that you've learned along the way. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. This has been great.
Thanks. This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.